against which two has not been determined, but they'll probably decide among themselves.
Who's sanctioning that, Dave? Is that the WWF?
No, that's Les Thatcher. It's totally independent, but
right.
So
I didn't think that. I'm happy to see they wouldn't exploit his death any more the way they did when they put his wife on the air after he died.
Yeah, well, that wasn't one of the high points of wrestling, that's for sure. That was a bad deal. This is also mentioned.
But it's a bad deal. But I mean, whoever attacks him in the mass media, I mean, never mind.
Okay. Now this is more on the drug testing thing. It says that basketball. This is from Sean Robinson, who says basketball is widely tested, but they don't test for marijuana. Do they test for? I mean, I'm not even familiar with. Like I said,
no, the NBA, that was a big issue in the off season. They do test for marijuana. In fact, guys reporting late for camp this past summer, and guys who are holdouts were all suspects, or all suspected of waiting until their systems cleared. They do. Well, it's part of the new collective bargaining agreement between the players and ownership and the league. They do test for marijuana.
Okay, now what about, do they test for steroids in basketball?
I imagine if steroids can show up in a blood test, in a urine test, they do. I don't know if don't know of too many leagues, or you know better than I, Dave, who tests blood.
I don't think anyone tests blood yet.
And unless you're testing blood, you can mask, you can cycle, you can do anything, just about anything you want, right?
Yeah, you are right about that. Now, baseball, this says from baseball, Sean says that baseball, do they drug test baseball?
No, they have to have probable or reasonable cause.
Right. I mean, I know they do. They drug test players, for cocaine and stuff, but baseball hasn't done anything about the issue of steroids. I know that
they have.
An article.
They've commissioned an extensive study. The professors and the doctors said ban andro, and then they ignored them. So they have done something. They've done nothing. But they put up a big public front.
Okay, but they haven't done anything with steroids that I'm aware of.
No, and you know what, Dave? I talked to beat writers who cover baseball, and they say as these guys get bigger, the male pattern baldness is proliferated, the acne on the backs is proliferated, and
sounds like wrestling.
Those are telltale signs of steroid abuse.
Okay, and he says that steroids are banned in all the major North American sports. Just to let you know, technically, based on the contracts that the WWF performers have and WCW performers have,
right.
I don't believe ECW. In fact, I'm almost sure of this, but I do. In fact, I do know not ECW, but WWF and WC performers in their contracts, they are not supposed to take steroids. It's specifically stated. Now, obviously, that's not enforced. But it is there.
What if it wasn't enforced, Dave? What if Vince McMahon said, I'm testing for steroids? Now, here's a former steroid user, by the way. Who knows if he's former? He claims he's a former steroid user. He can say, we're going to test for steroids. Then on the night of his big pay-per-view, his big stars show up dirty. What's he going to do? This is the foxes guarding the chicken coop. What difference does it make if he tests for steroids? You know who he's going to point out as a steroid user? The guy he wants to get rid of, the guy he doesn't want to pay. Then he'll say, "Oh, I'll get rid of that guy. He's on drugs." And he'll come out looking like a champ.
Actually, you know who he'll point to? If the ratings get close, he'll point to the star from his opposition promotion. Because he's done that one too. Actually, we've all been through that whole period of when they did test for steroids and when a guy came up dirty right before WrestleMania and what happened, and you pretty much called it right, because that's exactly what happened. Let's go to Tom in Delaware. You're first up with myself and Phil Mushnick.
Hey, Dave. How's it going?
It's going really good.
All right, good to hear it. I just have a couple questions. It's not really directed towards you, Mr. Mushnick. I don't think of you as the bad guy or anything, so I do believe there's kind of a double standard in terms of the drug use in some professional sports and then professional wrestling. Dave, I just wanted to say I was at the CyberSlam event Saturday. I thought it was a really good show. I was a bit distraught, though, because one of my absolute favorite wrestlers is Yoshihiro Tajiri, and both times I've gone to see him live, he's lost, and this time it was, he dropped the TV title. I just wanted to know what you thought his prospects were in the future. I mean, do you think he'd stick around in ECW for the rest of his career? Would he go back to Japan, or would he have any kind of chance making it in the Big Two?
Well, I mean, Paul Heyman's got plans for, he dropped one title, but he's going to be in line for another, for other things real soon. I mean, it wasn't like he's being forgotten or anything like that. As far as Tajiri, You know, it's like he's one of those guys that WCW would bury and that WWF wouldn't. Although WWF has got more of an open mind to smaller guys now than they have in the past.
I mean, they've been getting like that push to Taka and S.A. Rios and those kinds of guys.
You know, they don't really push them, but they're there. They're not embarrassed the way that they would have been a year ago.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they want him, he wants to go. I could see it. I don't know what Victor Quinones' situation is, because I think he's the one who actually has the contract with Tajiri.
Oh, okay.
But you know, I think that he likes working in America more than Japan, which is why he's working in America. But eventually, I mean, all the Japanese wrestlers like that, you know, pretty much eventually they all wind up back in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of, I wouldn't even call it a main event push, but, you know, over the summer he had the old, the feud with Taz. I mean, do you think he'd be main eventing any more pay-per-views in the near future?
I don't see him main eventing any pay-per-views, but I see him being on every pay-per-view in a solid match. Okay. But not on top, no. I mean, you know, I don't see Justin Credible and Yoshihiro Tajiri as the main event on a pay-per-view. I mean, you know, I just don't see it.
Okay,
it could happen. I wouldn't have seen Taz and Tajiri either, and it happened. So.
Yeah. I do think he'll just remain one of those kind of guys who just kind of pushes up the general quality of a pay-per-view. Like next month, I read on your website, you can have that match with Jado and Gato, Super Crazy. And do you think
they want that match. It's not finalized, but you know, it's like a good action match.
Yeah. Nice.
It's the difference between an average show. You know, if it hits, it's the difference between an average show and a good show. Nothing wrong with a good show.
Yeah, and just one other thing. Actually, my favorite WWF wrestler, Undertaker. Have you heard anything new about when he's going to be back?
Everyone seems to think right around King of the Ring.
King of the Ring.
I mean, he'll be on TV. I think he'll be on TV in the next month or so. And in the ring, you know, I mean, as soon as he's healthy, you know, he's torn pec. Kind of interesting, torn pec, huh, Phil?
Yeah. What kind of angle do you think is sticking him back with Kane, or would be Big Show? I mean, he's with Big Show and he left.
I got the impression he's going to be back with Paul Bearer, which means that he'll probably be back with Kane.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Dave.
Okay.
All right.
Let's go to Richard in Canada. Richard, you're next up.
Hi there. I guess my first comment is I agree with a lot of what Phil's saying on his drug use policy. I do wish it was tested more. I really don't like to see these deaths, especially with all these families. Some of these families going without a father for a long period of time. I also agree with his views on marketing to children, but I don't really agree with his views on toning the product down from where it is. I don't mind an adult-based product if it's marketed towards adults.
No, I'm sorry, what's your name, Richard?
Yes.
Hi, Richard. I agree with you. I mean, but you and I both know that we walk into Toys R Us, or what, I don't know what you have in Canada.
It's Toys R Us up here. They even have a shop zone for the WWF, which I find kind of humorous in a weird way.
It's not called Toys R Us A? No, it's not a cheap shot, and I apologize for that. But when you walk into Toys R Us, when you look at the commercials that are on WWF and WCW shows, they're not geared toward adults. The whole thing's geared toward kids. You don't see adults walking around with WWF T-shirts. You see children walking around with it. So yeah, I'm not looking to censor it as it relates to adults. I'm looking to have a real sense of reality about this. If they had to choose between an audience of 15-year-olds and an audience of 30-year-olds, what do you think the WWF and WCW and ECW would? Well, maybe not the ECW, but what do you think, given those choices, if they had to push a doomsday button? Where we market ourselves to 15-year-olds or 30-year-olds, which one would they choose? They choose the 15-year-old. So what we wish and versus what is are two radically different things. Yeah, are many adults enamored by the WWF, WCW? Of course they are, but that's not their main. That's not the main thrust of their marketing. You're not walking into a toy store and buying. I bet you. How old are you, Richard?
I'm 23.
Do you have any WWF video games?
Yeah, I have a copy of SmackDown.
You do?
Yeah. Wonderful game.
What is it rated?
I would think...
Not that ratings mean anything. You know, when I was a kid, you told me not to do something, I did it.
I think it's teen just because there isn't, any blood. It's just the fighting game because all the other fighting games I have are teeth.
But we both know, I mean, there's a reason that M&M's are advertised on WWF shows as opposed to United Airlines. There's a reason that video games are advertised as opposed to, Merrill Lynch.
Well, it's the perfect audience for video games. You got your male teenagers and early adult males.
So, but I know what you're saying, Richard. I'm not looking to censor it as it relates to adults, but we both know that the WWF and WCW will dry up and blow away without minors.
You do have a point there, because the kids are the fresh blood to the market. They need to replenish when either people tired of it or they just move on to something else.
When pro wrestlers show up at a shopping mall to sign autographs, look at the lines. It's 9, 10, 11-year-olds. It's not 30-year-olds. Richard, you're probably not going to go out of your way for that. And if you are, you'll probably be done by the time you're 25. Even when he says the Saturday afternoon shows and Saturday morning shows